Okay, hi. So let's go and visit our new subject, another one of good versus evil, I guess, or good versus bad. So this is a good one. So do you
Absolutely.
want to maybe figure out how to phrase that so my head isn't in it of thinking
Sure, sure.
that.
Absolutely. It's one that kind of popped into my head because I've heard people say, and I think we've seen this in movies, right? If there is a God, there must be a devil. Some from certain faiths would believe that. So you've talked about angels, and so that by extension of that logic, some
Yes.
people might assume that if there's angels, there must be demons in this kind of
I just need to tell you right while you're talking,
yeah.
there's this giant blue orb that just popped when you're talking about angels, and this big giant is that big of a blue orb just popped up. I was like, yeah, we're talking about you. Go ahead.
All right. That sounds good to me. So,
Right?
so I think the question I would pose is, I think a fundamental one, and that is there good and is there evil, or is there just good or love?
What I actually get, which is kind of I'm not really rooting for this part, but this is how they say it.
Sure.
And just remember, they is like the collective spirit team. That's how I usually say it. Um, they are basically saying neither. So they're
Mhm.
saying that's such a human concept of good or evil, that, and of course we need both of them, so we need them to know, so love needs hate to understand love, that kind of concept. So we need those contrasts. But good versus evil, there is love, but it's not in contradiction to anything. So love is, to how they're showing it, is a higher frequency, and it's not in the frequency of contrast. It's not in the
Mm.
frequency of taken away or removed. It's in the frequency of existence. It's kind of like just air on earth, it's not a takeaway, of course, if we suffocate ourselves, yes, but it's not taking away air from anybody else.
Mhm.
So that's that individualistic mindset of
Mm.
oh, well, I'm taking it away from me, and therefore it should not exist. But it's how they're showing it is that, well, it's just going to keep on existing for everybody else but you if you experience it that way. um for the sense of in a religious sense, um so people have come up and told me this of literally verbatim, how do you know the devil's not speaking to you? And I try not to laugh, because this is a genuine question.
Sure.
To me, it's
Absolutely.
funny because it's just kind of well, I don't believe in any of that, so it's just kind of like someone saying, how do you know the boogeyman's not going to come in your dreams? And I'm kind of I because I don't believe in the boogeyman. So
Yeah.
it's not to be disrespectful. It's just that that's not my belief. That's
Mhm.
actually a very religious belief. Somebody was just talking about how, for instance, pagans, people, specifically Christians, will go and chastise pagans, and especially those who believe in Wicca, of saying that they believe in the devil. And actually, in pagan religion, there is religion with the quotes, there is no belief of a devil. There's belief in
Mm.
multiple gods, but there's not, but it's more nature based. It's not like in Wicca, there's more gods in that, from what I
Mhm.
understand. But there's not the devil of how they see it. That the devil actually comes from Christianity, from what I understood. So I thought that was really interesting. The people who have said to me, religious, how they view it,
Mhm.
in a religious standpoint, of saying, well, how do you know the devil is not speaking? That's a very great, question, because for me, even if I, let's say, because I don't believe it, but if I did believe it, how would I understand that? And how I weigh that, because you can be really religious in whatever religion you believe and be super intuitive. You don't have
Mm.
to be, non-religious at all. You actually could be with especially with Catholics. I usually am you're very good at learning about saints. You're very good about learning about angels. That's where your juice is. That's where you flow. Follow that. Do
Mm.
that. That's what supports you. You should, if you want to call on Jesus, you call on Jesus, and every single, you funnel Jesus, you work with Jesus, you do that. That's why it's so important that intuition isn't a following. It's also not a religion. It's not a belief. It is your
Mm.
senses, just like seeing, hearing, smelling. So intuitive or psychic, however you want to term it, that comes, like, as we learned, from within, your wellspring within, and expands, and so when you're going and intuiting something, how do I know that it's not, let's say, the devil? Let's say I'm Christian and I believe that. How do I know it's not the devil? It doesn't tell me what to do. Okay. There's never energy, consciousness never tells you what to do, because one, you have free will. So consciousness knows that. Okay. Consciousness I view as like the intuition. Intuition is like the gateway, and consciousness is like what you're maybe trying to grasp. Okay. And so that, if it's the devil, that would be, I'm overpowering my will onto you. Okay. So it's the same thing of when people come to me and say, what do I do? And I
Mhm.
say, I don't know. I'm not here to tell you what to do. All I'm going to tell you is what's aligning for you for your biggest birth, for your biggest opportunity to express yourself wholly, fully, in the highest consciousness of love. Sometimes, even if I say, oh no, you're moving, and you're kind of like, I don't want to move. Great. That's okay. You get to still have that. You don't have to move. I'm not telling you you have to move. All I'm telling you is that the alignment of that is in that lane, and it flows a lot freely, and there's a lot more of it in that lane. Now
Mhm.
you could be like, well, 20 years later, it's like, fine, I moved. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, great. It was never timed. It's okay,
Mhm.
and it doesn't mean that it's also going to be great. Like, there's a lot of things, like even like when I moved, I took really a lot to end up moving to Haines, Alaska, where I live part-time. And well, now part-time. And so it took a lot, years and years and years and decades, to do this. And I wanted to, I didn't know it was specifically Alaska. I didn't know it was specifically Haines, all those type of things, but I knew I was going in that direction, but everything wasn't fitting into that. So it's just like a psychic would read that of like, oh no, Alaska, that's it. But then I come here, and then I go through an entire landslide, an entire upheaval of my entire life. And so everybody, all the spectators are saying, oh, you must have bad luck. That was terrible. Why did you move? You made a mistake. And it's just like, I made the greatest choice ever, because I listened to what was necessary. Just like, as the same thing, I had to go through that landslide. If I was dead, I would have had to be dead in that landslide. Since I'm alive, I had to be alive through that landslide. It doesn't mean I have to speak on behalf of it. It doesn't mean I have to heal it. It doesn't mean that I have to be better for it. It might mean that I'm going to be experiencing the word suffering for a very long time. Doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole higher choice. And so when you get something that is telling you something, so when you get information that feels like it's trying to steer you in a direction, which I call the devil the ego. Okay. So
Mhm.
this is so people outside of like the religious connotation, when somebody asks me this, like, how do you know it's not the devil? I'm like, oh, you mean the ego?
Mm.
So the ego is the ego has OCD. Okay. The ego
Mm.
is saying, oh, well, you should do this or else something's going to happen. The ego is, and trust me, I have major OCD. The ego, and I had to really separate that, because that becomes almost narcissistic in your own life. It's preventative, which is a big red flag. As soon as you're prevented, any type of intuition never comes, rarely comes that far ahead. And if it comes ahead of time, to prevent you. It's not prevent, just like, remember the podcast part where I talked about the car accident. It wasn't preventing me from getting in the car accident. I had to be in the car accident. It was helping my body adjust to the energy that was going to happen. So my psyche, was going, so that's the preventativeness. The ego wants to say, oh no, you should have learned. You know what I'm saying? So I had to dismantle that ego for years, learning how that wasn't the truth. That's the devil. So the devil, and the ego are just really honestly the same. And so we have to take our ego devil out of it, to be able to listen neutrally. It's not about preventing, it's about awakening to, the awareness is the easy factor. The awareness, because what we raise to, when we are raising to the level of awareness, there's no trying to make it different. It's a full acceptance of what is. So when you start going through your life of accepting what is, I stubbed my toe, I accept that. I'm saying, ow, I'm in pain, I accept that. This is never going to get better. Maybe, I'm saying, that's a story. That's where the ego gets in, but just the pureness of accepting what is, that's when you stop separating it of good versus evil. So things aren't better because they're good, same as things aren't better or worse because they're evil. Okay. There's so much wealth of information in both. And a lot of times, because we're human on this plane of existence of Earth, we need that for our understanding of that, because we can't understand really love unless we have pain and suffering and meaning understanding of those, not actually living it, but understanding those. Hope that kind of helps.
I like that. No, that was good. I feel
Yeah.
like that was a kind of a good broad view of
Yeah. So
that.
the best part is, like, you don't have to go into the direction of like trying to fit in,
Right.
like, I don't have, it's not a religion. It's not a place of fitting in your belief. Like, that's the best part. Everyone could have, and everybody's different. Let's say in the whole entire spiritual community, like, there's a lot of like, oh, I want a me too kind of situation. And it's just like, how about we just are like, isn't this amazing? And then just like, wow,
Right.
and just that of like, just being like, I never thought of it that way. Cool. Might not do
Yeah.
it that way, but who cares? Like, super cool.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it helps to deconstruct or reconstruct or construct new narratives, right? So the narratives, the stories we tell are, and create the perspectives that we hold. And if you think there's a demon dogging you along your life, it's so outside of you're like, well, this is kind of beyond me, right? As opposed to being like, these situations are, and I am going to react with them and learn from them, as opposed to being that kind of oppositional kind of them versus me, them maybe
Yeah,
not existing, right? And
exactly.
so, and then that can puts you back in the driver's seat a little bit.
Yes.
So
Kitty. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think
so
that, yeah, just what you said is like, your, what was it?
that
It
was
was
what.
just like such a beautiful lead in of what you're saying about like what we're probably going to talk about the demon part nature
Mhm.
of it is just like, it's to be used. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mm.
It's to be used. So it's not like, hey, I need an aerosol can of like, get away,
Yeah.
like, there's the devil talking to me. It's not that. It's like, can we not entertain it? You know what I'm saying? But use it. It's like, oh,
Mm.
there's the ego. That's using it, seeing it
Mm.
for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Kind
Yeah.
of like, when we're scared of ghosts, it's like, turn on the lights. Oh,
Right.
okay. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, I still see a ghost. Great. Let's talk.
Yeah. No, and then imagine that learning how to use it must be a hard skill, because when we're feeling physical and emotional pain, it's hard to be philosophical about that.
And it's an
So,
egoless skill.
yeah,
So it doesn't
right,
feed you the way we're used to
right.
be fed,
That's a good point.
It's like, who wants that?
Right.
That's
And
why
then you have
I
to
do my job.
and you have to accept the fact that you actually have an ego. Some people, we could be having this conversation and there's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Right. So it's not,
I think
so
a
they
lot
have
of
a few more
people.
steps to go before, we start having a
Yeah.
back and forth conversation. That's great.
Yeah. I feel like demons are, so how we were talking about like the devil,
Yeah.
like who is the devil talking to us, stuff like that.
Hmm.
There is also the understanding, and I loved like what you're saying about like we're going to be using that information. We're going to be uh delving into that instead of like being like that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And in that, there's also entities.
Hmm.
Entities aren't bad. And so there's a lot of kind of things. And I had a kind of a hard time learning this because I was kind of like a love and light person. Like
Yeah.
I just could care less. I was like, I don't want to deal with it. I'm not a really kind of big fan of it. I don't do um nighttime stuff. I'm not like I just don't. That is, and I think
Yeah.
because I was afraid of that, and
Mm.
so I'm not. That wasn't my comfort zone. Like some people can be super psychic of where like, oh no, I'm going in that underworld. Like I don't even go to haunted houses. Like I
Really?
am like, no,
Mm.
not because I'm scared, just because I know that I'm going to be attached to,
Mm.
and so they love. So here's like a 101 of it. So
Please. Yeah.
entities are basically energy.
Okay.
A lot of times I kind of almost see it as like cancer. So cancer, when it like, and it kind of and really correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't really understand mechanically or biologically how cancer works, but to me it always is like, it's just attracting more of itself, and it causes, it's not necessarily a healthy self, it's just creating more, and
Hmm.
sometimes that forms from an emotional, a lot of times I feel like it's the foundation for an emotional stuff, that we are working through or stuff like that.
Hmm.
Not necessarily bad. Again, just it's a condensed situation.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like attracts like.
Hmm.
Um, that's the formation of entity. So for instance, when people die, and I don't know if I should talk about this right now, but I'll talk about that part later. When they
Okay.
die, that basically they can release entities that are in their energy field, from what I felt in my
Mm.
practice. And when they do that, and not just death, just even like when I'm talking to even someone, people have entities. I have entities all the time around me, all the time. And again, it's not good or bad. It's just energy. And so energy likes other energy. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Mm.
oh, you're going to pay attention to me. Ooh, ooh, ooh. So, but that's why I do the clearing of what I showed in the very beginning of this whole podcast, is that it's so important for you to have cleared space. So you're really filling up your vortex, and you could even just do it in your mind right now. So you let your monkey tail go all the way down to the center of the earth. You magnetically hook on. You just bring your attention to above your head, have the beautiful golden ball of light, let that energy go through your body and then out your body. With the exhale, just really go and build up your whole vortex so you're really fully occupied, and just bring attention all around you, underneath you, your feet, above you. That vortex is just like a big egg all around you. So you're really
Hmm.
pumping your entire vortex with you. Yeah. So like right now I have to do the back of me because it feels a little empty. And so it's like, especially when I'm talking about energies or stuff like that, you want to be so full in your space. There we go. That nothing can occupy your space. They just want to
Hmm.
be, it's like animals. They just want to be petted. You know what I'm saying? They just want to be like, oh, it's not necessarily like, hey, your ghost send you to the light kind of stuff, which I'm like very
Yeah.
against actually. But it's just energy that doesn't necessarily have consciousness.
That's
It
the question I
has,
was going to ask is does it
yeah,
have consciousness or any sort of want or will, or is it just
no,
okay?
not that I feel.
Okay.
That's why I feel like it's just like almost like a child. Like it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean harm. It just occupies space. So
Hmm.
again, the freeing of it, I feel like it allows it to break apart. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? It's just like, it almost feels like, I know this sounds really gross, but like if you fart or like I compare it always like for like when women have their menstrual cycle, like as soon as you get your menses, you're just like, oh my God. Like it's like this balloon popping kind of a feeling. It's like that. So they do have that. I do feel like the entity has that feeling, but that might be my projected feeling onto
Mm.
the entity. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Which I feel like is probably more the case, but it's that feeling that I always get of like, oh my God, you're free. I'm free. We're both free, you know? So it just kind of like is
Mm.
able to be like break apart and almost like do its offerings. But entity can show up as what looks like in a religious sense as demons. And
Okay.
that's like a giant, that's like a big mass tumor. You know what I'm saying? Like something that you're like, no chemo is going to kill this. I am going to live on for generations, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's an entity that literally lives on for generations. And so it's like, let's say, take me, and then I'm realizing that, oh my gosh, this stuff isn't mine. This is generational, you know? And so
Mm.
it kind of goes into the world of epigenetics and stuff like that, of like,
Yeah.
what are we carrying through our energy bodies, our consciousness. And so when I do, let's say, Ho'oponopono or stuff like that, I'm clearing that in a very generational way. And
Mm.
that I don't own it. It is not mine. I will not have an opinion about it. I just let it be free, you know, to be able
Mhm.
to kind of like give it its own release, you know, and it doesn't necessarily die, it just evolves, you know, by the expansion. It's just like how we leave our body, we expand and kind of like burst open. Same thing with that entity. It's like, oh, thank God.
Where does it
Like
go?
I feel like there's no such thing as time, so there's no such thing
Right.
as a place. It feels
Okay.
like the expansion of almost like they keep on saying it like as the stars, like where are the stars going or where did they start
Mm.
from? And it's like, well, we know like scientifically where it starts from, but it's just like, well, what happened to the star's birth before that? Like, did
Mm.
it have a mom and dad? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
where did it begin? You know, so it's kind of like that. It
Mm.
just shows that it just shows space. It actually shows, it's so funny that I'm glad you asked that because it showed exactly my NDE. So in my near death experience, when it was totally black, which is the whole experience, and it was super black and just it looked like outer space, and that's what they showed. Like it's just
Mm.
like that, like it, but it's such a beautiful release, and it's like it just keeps on going.
Are we the
No
only
time and
vibration that can have entities attached to us?
wait, say that again.
Are we the only, like, us here on Earth, are we the only entities or the only vibration that can, sorry, are we the only vibration that can have entities attached to us?
It's such a good question because I got yes in like big letters, but I keep on asking for animals because I'm like, no. Okay, the animals, okay, the animals carry it though. So let's say cancer. Okay, cancer could be sometimes construed, not all the time. And again, we don't want, especially with cancer, we don't want to necessarily get rid of it. Logically, we want to get rid of it, but we want, instead they keep on saying you want to heal it. You want to heal the emotional foundation. Okay, so it could get rid of itself if it needs to, you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And usually it does, you know.
Right.
There's these monks, oh gosh, I wish I would have like a link to this. There's these monks that would pray, and they would just say like, I think it was just I love you. And
Mm.
there's this woman, and they're praying, and there's like four or five of them, and they go to the hospital for like, I don't know, 2 days or something, or like 48 hours they're up or something like that. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. All they're doing is telling this woman, I love you, I love you, I love you, for so long, whatever it was. And you could see on the screen the tumor shrinking, and it went
Mm.
to nothing, like before your eyes. And of course they
Mm.
sped it up, you know,
Sure.
but you're just like, what is happening?
Mm.
So that's what I feel like entity energy is. It's an
Yeah.
cancer is, it's an opportunity, even though it's so hard to wrap your mind around that. And
Mhm.
it's not that you did anything wrong. You actually are an incredible species that you are elevating this possibility to be able not to heal it, but to invite consciousness of this level here.
Mm.
Okay. So when someone dies of cancer, let's say, there's nothing wrong with them. They didn't fail. They didn't
Mm.
not accomplish their mission or anything like that. And so it doesn't mean that, because we're so success oriented of thinking, oh, well, that shouldn't have happened. What
Right.
it is that those entities, which I do feel like with animals, they almost piggyback, but it's
Mm.
almost that the animals are helping you. They're almost taking it to help
Mm.
carry it so we don't get so overburdened.
Mm.
So a lot, you'll see it, especially recently. I feel like meaning in this 21st century, there's a lot of dogs, and specifically dogs getting tumors and stuff like that. And so we always are, obviously it's GMO food, and, not being outside in the earth and grounding enough, and just all these things that we believe, which they all play a part. Yes. Okay. Sure. Yeah. It's not everything, but yes. Aside from that, I do feel like animals carry it for us. That's what animals
Mm.
do, you know. Dogs more so than any other animals, you know what I'm saying? But that's what they're doing. And it's also like how cats will go and literally are always around computers. If you think about it, they love to lay on your keyboard, they love to go around your laptop. They're just like obsessed,
Yeah.
as you experience. And the
Yeah.
reason for that is, I guess, I don't know if it's the negative ions. It's something
Mm.
that cats actually love, that frequency. And this is what boggles my mind, is that for humans, it's actually a detriment to our energy body of being around so much electronics and that. But
Mm.
for cats, it actually feeds it. Like,
Mm.
you're like, what? Like, how is it that they're showing us the magic of our minds? You know what I'm saying? And how, but it's also how they're doing it in their body. So,
Mm.
but to like wrap this more of a full circle, I
Yeah.
feel like demons are, again, it's more of a religious word, but if we were to kind of like break it apart, it's more entity energy.
Okay.
And some entity energy could be a giant tumor and a giant dot dot dot, and that's really hard to release. Let's say if you have a really heavy um demonic, I don't want to call it demonic, or I don't even want to call it dark, because dark is like the womb and it is amazing,
Mm.
and like that was my whole entire NDE. And so I'm like,
Mm.
the light is overrated, that kind of thing. But
Right.
I call it dense. So
Mm.
the denseness of something, which we're really dense, but like the density of something, that's all it's asking, is to be freer, to be more expansive, that kind of stuff. So again, when you have a lot of entity energy, or you have a very active house, or you have like, you know, where you might be like, oh my God, there's a demon, whatever it is, you get help. There's a lot of psychics, a lot of intuitives, a lot of people that can help you in the energy field. There's a lot of things like when I work with clients, people are like, do I need to fly you to my house? I was like, no, I hate flying. I was like, I'm not coming to your house. But
Yeah.
it's like, what I do is like, I see it in my mind. I know exactly what their house, I know exactly the room that's happening. I don't need like a picture or their layout or anything. I'll tell you exactly, go here. There's a penny that's probably on the ground. They're like, how did you know? I'm like, just because I know, be quiet, like, and I'm just like, do. But there's so many people like me who can do that. And then we'll give you the tools of how to be able to handle that and to release that energy. And again, it's the same thing with cancer. You don't fight cancer. You love cancer to death. Okay. So you just love it. Thank you so much for showing me boundaries, entity. Thank you so much for coming into my life and really messing things up so I could be like, whoa, dude, I need to learn my boundaries. I need to get fully in my body. I need this. That's what happened to me. I was so sick from so many energies coming in my space until I really was so regimented on being like, no,
Mm.
just no. And then I just got so occupied with being in the body, but not obsessed with the body. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Not that. but in the body, meaning fully, my body's out here. My body's not here. You know, my
Mm.
body's out here. So it's like really being occupying, not here, you know, and being in the body. All those entities are like, yeah, you're freeing me simultaneously. And I'm like, I know, you're welcome.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that's also the idea that cancer is, you know, as you're stating, it's something that going, you know, we use a lot of war metaphors for a lot of things, but that's one of them, right? Like we muster the troops and we're going to battle against this, and it makes sense. You know, people are
Yeah.
feeling like they're fighting for their lives, and it's
And you are.
right. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like the idea of there's also a energetic element to it. It's interesting. I'm sure people probably, like you said, specialize in that kind of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just basically, you could look up energetic healer,
Yeah.
or a lot of people, some Reiki people do it.
Oh.
That's a very kind of like a generalized, you know,
Hmm.
thing. Usually you'll find them, you know, go to a
Yeah.
gem store, go to anywhere that's just kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, woo woo, you know, that you're just kind of like, oh, I don't know if I should go in there. Go in there, you know, if they have a
Hmm.
spiritual bookstore, they will know. They have the
Yeah.
list, you
Right.
know. I'll be in there being like, there's my business card, you know.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. I was always wondering about how the concept of demons, and now understanding, having a new terminology and concept of the idea of entities. It's really
Yeah.
something I'll be chewing on, I'm sure, for days after this. So that's
Yeah, and
cool.
they're not bad. Like everybody
Yeah.
just I had a lot hard time learning that, because I was just
Yeah.
like, I don't want entities. Like, ew, like get away from me. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. All right.